Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here on Play on GAA with me, Seamus Brady, and for this one I am joined by Matthew Hurley, the GAA Statsman, to give an in-depth review on all of the weekend's action. And by God, Matthew, we had a busy weekend of action. We were just talking about it off air. So many games. How did you find the weekend?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Seamus. Yeah, Saturday I watched nearly all the games, to be honest, because I was doing nothing else really, because only the Eurovision was on in the evening, so nothing much at all. And then Sunday I actually went to a soccer game. I was covering a soccer game for once, so I didn't see Dublin loud. Well, thank God in the end, because it was an absolute mismatch. But I saw a
Probably
bit of
more
Armagh.
goals at the GAA match.
Exactly. There was way
Yeah.
more. There was 4 more, in fact.
Wow.
So yeah. So maybe I missed the goals, but yeah. But even the Armagh Derry game, watched that, and yeah, I know penalty shootouts is a cause for debate in Gaelic football, but to be honest, looking at both Armagh and Derry playing it out, I was thinking I'm hoping for a penalty shootout here, because
Yeah.
what drama, what excitement out of the game, and yeah, excited to get into all the games this weekend as well.
Yeah, that's the kind of contradiction about it, is that I have to say, when the game was equalised again by Rian O'Neill, I was thinking, I hope no one else scores now. I wanted to go to penalties. Whereas, look, we'll get into the debate when we talk about the game. We'll go for the game now. Of course, Derry 115, Armagh 18 points. Derry winning 3-1 on penalties in Clonus. I mean, just first of all, strange game in terms of the fact that the first half, the quality wasn't the best. Armagh trailed the game for 62 minutes and then put on a burst. Like, for long periods of this game, Armagh were constantly getting to 1 point behind Derry, and Derry would pull back ahead. But definitely for Derry, the foothold they got on the game was from the Brendan Rodgers goal. And I have to say, like, for me, there's 5 instances where Armagh lost this game. And I'm going to talk about where I think the 5 are. But definitely number 1 is the Brendan Rodgers goal. Like, Rafferty didn't really make his mind up. He kind of half came for the ball, got caught in no man's land. And Rodgers didn't even look like he really believed that he could score from there, just put his fist to it, and it ends up in the net.
You know what, Seamus? I think you have to give Rafferty, a bit of a credit in a way, because at the same time both the teams' colours were the same, literally. So he might have thought that was an Armagh player that was fisting it back to him, but
Yeah.
all jokes
I mean, it was
aside, look,
at that level of power.
he was, and yeah, it was definitely, and it was a brilliant goal by Brendan Rodgers. But at the same time, yeah, Rafferty maybe could have done a lot better, and that's Rafferty's game. Like, he's very on the edge. He goes out of the goal, goes inside the goal. The same as Oran Lynch at times yesterday. Like, he was a bit dodgy yesterday. I think for the last play as well, for the Armagh equaliser in normal time. Like, the Derry defence was very poor as well. So yeah, it was mistakes on both sides. The quality wasn't the best of the first half, but and there was more talk about the shirt colours of the first half than the actual quality of the game itself. But yeah, like, they got that.
Whoever chose those colours, like, seriously,
They should get sacked in the morning, Seamus.
I was on Aaron's podcast this afternoon, and someone commented saying that Derry are superstitious and they prefer that kit. Like, still though, like, why would you prefer the away kit? I've never seen teams be superstitious towards not liking their home kit. I mean, that's the kit they won the ULSTER final in the year before.
Yeah, I don't know.
Look,
Jeez, I don't know.
anyway, I want your opinion on this. I'm going to run through the other 5 areas, or the other 4 areas. So I've listed number 1, which was the easy concession of the goal, and I'm going to go through it in order. Second one is Rory Grugan's mark. Like, genuinely, the minute I was watching the game, the minute he put his hand up to take the mark, I was thinking, what is he doing? I've never seen Grugan kick the ball that far, let alone put it over the bar from a distance like that. And honestly, I think you could see it in his face. The minute he had a look at the post after he put his hands up, you could see him kind of doing like his eyes were wide. He was thinking, I think I've messed it up here. He takes a shot. But then even then, if you think you can't make it, look for a 1-2. Try work something. You don't have to pull the trigger. You've got the last attack. And so that's where I think they messed up. Then as well, Brendan Rodgers, after his black card, I don't think Armagh capitalised on the extra time, the first 8 minutes without him well enough. I thought they should have at least needed to be 3 points ahead to close the game out. Then, when Derry have pulled a point back to leave it a 1-point game with the most crucial kick out in the game, Rafferty decides to float the ball high on Conor Glass. Like, what are you thinking? Of course, Glass wins it. And then McGuigan gets fouled, and Rian O'Neill tries to play the tough guy with Shane McGuigan, grabs a hold of him. The referee, Goff, who'd been doing it the entire game, moves the free forward, which then gives McGuigan a shot at the post, which he nails it. And then, of course, game goes to penalties, and Armagh lose. Like, I think those areas, even though they did a lot right in the game, those areas Armagh messed up, I think.
They definitely did. And I suppose it was the same in the Galway game last year when they got that goal through, I think was it Grugan who got that goal in extra time, or I think it was Grugan who got the goal in extra time. And you're thinking, Armagh have to close out this game. And then Kenny McDade goes up the other end and scores for Galway. It was the exact same replica here. Like, I mean, like Rian O'Neill, I think that was, I know Rian O'Neill's an outstanding footballer, but the way he grabbed Shane McGuigan, I was like, why are you doing? It's extra time. Yeah. You're ahead in the game. Just a bit of game management, And I think, honestly, yes, Derry, the 2 in a row, it's historic for them. It's their first 2 in a row in Ulster since the 70s. But I honestly think if Armagh would have won that game, it would have meant a lot more to them than it would to Derry. Because they would have got over that hurdle of not messing up in big occasions like that. But they did, alas. And on the Rory Grugan kick in normal time, at that time, I was thinking, it's amazing, and hindsight is a wonderful thing, Seamus, because at that time I was thinking, go for it. You may as well, like, you're leveling the game, there's no pressure on you, you may as well go for it. But now that you roll it back, you're thinking, why did you catch the mark? Why couldn't you play it in? Yeah. Again, there's no pressure on the Armagh team. The clock was in the red zone. Why didn't you go for play? And it was very, very poor. The extra man when Brendan Rodgers got black carded, Armagh scored 1 point. Mm-hmm. To be honest, that's not good enough. And ultimately lost at the Ulster final after that. And another thing, I'm sure you're going to say number 5 is the penalty shootout. And Armagh not practicing the penalties. I can read your mind, Seamus, so yeah.
Well, it's like, this is a controversial one. I think Rafferty, and we have a couple of comments in here. We have here from Alex Walsh. Why are Waterford so shit? It's depressing. We'll get on to Waterford hurling in a minute. And then, Matthew, this one is directly for you. Was Matthew crying after he heard that Meath won? So, what do you think about that?
I was okay with it. It's Tipperary.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all love. Neither of us will be coming up against me.
Go beat down, and then I'll be like, okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think.
God's sake,
Meath did what they needed to do in that game. We'll get on to it later on. But back to the Derry game. For the penalties, I think, look, Rafferty, and this was going to be controversial. Rafferty's penalty and Rian O'Neill's penalty, I think they are both bad penalties. Just out straight, I just think they are bad penalties. Very savable at the right height for Oran Lynch. If he guesses right, he saves that 10 times out of 10. But the save he made from the Aidan Nugent penalty was outstanding. That was a fantastic save. That was right in the corner. Outstretched arm, palmed it away. Great save. Whereas, like, obviously, Derry's penalties, Glass's penalty, McFall's penalty, McGuigan's penalty were very solid. And I was surprised they put Paul Cassidy on one, I have to say, because he looked absolutely exhausted in extra time. I was stunned that he stepped up to take one, because there was one part where Rafferty strolled past him and kicked the ball over the bar, and Cassidy didn't even look like he was bothered tackling. And I thought, this guy's exhausted. He needs to be taken off, let alone be put on a penalty. But I was surprised when that happened. But when we were talking about Armagh failing to close out the game and making mistakes, which cost them the game, you could argue that Derry also would have been thinking that going into extra time. You're looking at that thinking, Brendan Rodgers, his hand pass shot off the post, that would have put Derry 3 points clear in the 66th minute. They would have pushed on to win the game, I fully believe. And then also, Paddy Cassidy getting dispossessed by Jarlath O'Byrne in the last play of the game. I think if Paddy Cassidy belts that ball over the sideline into touch, the referee blows the full-time whistle. So you could also say that Derry should have closed the game out in full-time as well.
Maybe so. It's two sides of every story. But even going back to the penalty shootout, you're thinking, why didn't Armagh practice penalties? I know we'll get on to the penalty shootout thing in just a sec, but having lost the penalty shootout to Galway last year, you're thinking, you have to practice penalties, lads, to go on. This is the new world of Gaelic football. Like it or love it or hate it, it's the new world of it. And Armagh had to practice penalties, simply put. And yeah, Orleans had a brilliant performance in goal, but even, going back to the Derry point, and I think I touched on it earlier as well, Cassidy losing the ball to Jarlath O'Byrne, like, that was suicidal stuff from Derry.
Yeah.
Like, I know at the same time you were criticising Ethan Rafferty for kicking it long into Conor Glass, but at the same time, it was well away from the goal, that kick out. With Orleans' kick out, it was in the D. And you're thinking, why would you do that when you're a point up? And maybe both sides need to learn about game management, Derry and Armagh, and we will get on to the penalties as well, but Armagh needed to practice penalties. They need to practice them even more now. I've seen Armagh fans get on to me over the past few hours say, no matter if they're good or bad or Gaelic football, we need good penalty takers. Just put them on the field and let them take the penalty, because our players cannot take penalties. And maybe the Armagh fans are right, because that's 2 penalty shootouts now they've lost.
Yeah, and 2 penalty shootouts where I believe they've only scored one of their penalties that they took against Galway. I know that they missed a good few in that shootout. Galway scored all of theirs. But yeah, for Armagh, look, it's a heartbreaking way to lose. And yeah, that brings us nicely along to the penalty shootout debate. And look, me and you openly, hand on heart, wanted that game to go to penalties at the end. But when the penalties are all said and done, here's my stance on it. For the GAA, and I said this on Aaron's podcast today, for the GAA, it's just bad business. It's bad business to have the game finished in penalty shootout. It just does not make any logical sense. And I'm going to give you 3 examples. This game, between Armagh and Derry, the Ulster final, the Munster hurling final last year between Clare and Limerick, and then the All-Ireland quarter-final between Armagh and Galway last year. All 3 of those games, if they had gone to a replay, would have been the talk of the country in the build-up to the replay. Everybody would have been buzzing to see these games, particularly Clare and Limerick in the hurling. Everyone would have been talking about that one. Armagh and Galway as well. Can you imagine if Rian O'Neill had slotted that free, got the draw, they had a scrap going down the tunnel, curtains closed, go on, we'll see you next week. The whole country would have been buzzing for that replay. And look, maybe Galway would have just turned up and won, but we don't know. And for me, it's just bad business that the GAA is just trying to get these over and done with, it feels like. It's like, okay, no, we need this game to be done today, so penalty shootout. Like, you might as well just flip a coin, because I don't really believe that any GAA team wants the game to go to penalties. So yes, while they may practice them the odd time, I don't think any team is going into a GAA match thinking, oh, what if this game goes to penalties? They all want to win it in normal time, win it in extra time at worst. They do not want it to go to penalties. So for me, from a business standpoint, it makes no sense why the GAA seems determined to get these games over and done with as quick as possible. Like, it's the 15th of May and we're already finished the provincials.
Yeah, I definitely think you make very good points, Seamus, but I think Galway and Armagh, excuse valid. I think that should have gone to a replay because it's in the All-Ireland season. But for provincial championships, I think they should just end on the day. And I'm still a firm believer of that. And why I was for penalties in the first place, I was on a podcast with Patrick Sharkey from GAA Zone and Aaron himself and GAA Fan TV, and we were discussing penalties. I was initially for penalties and Aaron was against them. The reason I was for penalties was yes, it was something different and excitement at the end of the games and stuff like that. But the main reason was I watched in 2015 Cork against Kerry go to a replay from Fitzgerald Stadium when Fionn Fitzgerald kicked that point over the bar. And that was the worst thing to happen to Cork football for years, because it went to a replay. The week after, Cork were in action against Kildare in the All-Ireland qualifiers, and we got humbled in Semple Stadium. I mean, yeah, I think it affects teams. And imagine, play the Cork David's advocates with Armagh for a minute. If Armagh went to a replay now yesterday, lost to Derry next weekend, they would have been going into a game against Westmeath tired, jaded, and deflated. And Westmeath could have easily turned them over. No Armagh are going to a situation. They have a week to prepare.
I fully get what you mean. I feel like it's more of a calendar issue that the GAA has put so much tension on getting the season done as quick as possible, that they've given absolutely no time for restructuring. Like, let's be honest here, just saying this, like, with the league and everything, if we got, I know this is created, I know this is something, but say the GAA Championship for whatever reason couldn't be played for a couple of weeks, they have no breathing room. Do you get what I mean? Like, there's no time for games to be postponed. There's no time for games to be refixed or rescheduled. Like, there's no time. And I feel like that's more of a general calendar issue.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned in a video that on your channel, it's a very good video on what the GAA needs to do better. It was an hour and a half of us talking together, and you mentioned the point that the league should be scrapped in a way. And I'm beginning to see that point.
Controversial one, but I would have said, like, do it kind of the way that the ladies Gaelic football do it, kind of without the leagues, is you do your provincial championships and then go into your All Ireland series, senior, intermediate, junior. That's honestly what I think is best, because you get to keep the provincial championships and you still have, your cracking Ulster games, but then you don't have like a situation where Westmeath are in a group where they're about to be eaten alive by three of the best teams in the country. Like, that type of thing doesn't happen then that often.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's a tricky issue, and some people are for replays. You're more for replays than I am, to be honest with you. Most people are against them, like myself. Yeah, I'd say it's a tough discussion. It really is a tough discussion. But in my honest opinion, in the current calendar that we live in at the moment, I think provincial final should go to penalties and it should go to extra time. I just have that opinion since 2015, since Cork were knocked out of that match by Kildare. But if it was an All-Ireland series, Galway Armagh, for example, last year, that should have gone to a replay, because both sides, they won't have a second chance after that, because whoever loses is gone completely. And that's my point, because there's going to be time.
I get what you mean, yeah. No, that's a very good point, that depending on what stage of the championship, because I know that they don't do penalty shootouts for the All-Ireland final. So why not apply that to the quarterfinal, semi-final, things like that? Yeah.
I think it's a very good point as well, and that should be implemented as well. But like, when you think from Armagh's point of view, like, honestly, Seamus, if Armagh went to a replay against Derry and lost next weekend, how do you think Westmeath would be feeling? They'd be going into the game full of confidence, I'd imagine, anyway.
True, but like, this is my other thing. If the GAA is so determined to get the season over and done with as quick as possible, then why are they out here organising group stages after the provincial championships is done? Like, why have they picked a structure with that? Like, if you're talking about wanting to cut down on the amount of games, why are you introducing group stages after the provincial championships? Like, the longest championship season was the one where we had the Super 8s introduced. And now we've brought back basically a different version. And we have 3 teams out of 4 getting out of that. Like, talk about how many games are going to get played. Like, if you're talking about making time, then I would rather see kind of time for, these great rivalries getting played out again, rather than, because let's be honest, the GAA's best box office games, to my memory, over the last 20, 25 years, have all been replays. A lot of them have been replays. You got Meath Dublin in 91. You've got Mayo Dublin in 2016, Mayo Dublin in 2015, Cork and Kerry in the Munster Championships. How many times did those sides draw and then they had to lock horns again? Tyrone Armagh in 2005. Like over and over again. Unbelievable. Dublin Tyrone in 2005, the first game where Mulligan got the goal. Like the amount of times where epic games went to the replay, and the replay ended up being probably the GAA's most watched game of the year. Like when two teams display just how neck and neck they are, it tends to lead to a fascinating replay.
The thing is, I know the Cork and Kerry thing in 2015, but I thought of another example there in 2016. Roscommon played Galway. That went to a replay. Galway pulverised them in the Connacht replay in the final. Roscommon had to go out the next week and play Clare. Lost.
Yeah. That's
my point, Seamus. I think it makes, losing provincial finalists will suffer badly after replays if we're going to go back to those days.
But I could argue the penalty shootout would have a similar demoralising effect. Could you argue that?
The thing is, that's 2 weeks, 2 week gap. Rather than that's my counter argument to that. I think, like, Armagh still have 2 weeks.
Well, what do you think? Just the last thing I'll ask on this: what do you think the players would have chosen? What do you think Shane McGuigan and Conor? Like, honestly, if the ref had called up Conor Glass and Rian O'Neill, the two captains, and said, you know what, we can settle it now or we can go for a replay?
I would honestly say, because I was actually, my club side were involved in a penalty shoot. It was hurling now, but this is a different sport, but it was hurling. And coming back, out of the dressing rooms, I was speaking to the players after the game, and they said we would have rather a replay.
Yeah.
So I would guess that Conor Glass and Shane McGuigan and all them would have rather a replay. From my experience anyway, from talking to players from a club level anyway. So I'd imagine at an inter-county level, it'll be pretty much the same.
Yeah, well, it's one of those debates where I think I'm right in saying that both of us can see both sides. I can see the arguments for it and I can see the arguments against it. And I'll hold my hands up and say, whatever I say about it, I was watching the game and I was hoping that nobody else scored and it went to penalties. And like, it was great excitement to watch. But yeah, congratulations to Derry, Ulster champions 2023, back-to-back for the first time since the 70s, as you said. But we're going to move over now to the Leinster final, one that was way more predictable, sadly, than the Ulster final. Dublin 5-21, Louth 15 points from Croke Park. Yeah, just again, deja vu. Dublin putting 5 goals past their opponents in the Leinster final for the second year in a row.
Yeah, and this is going to be really, really bad now for Louth in the next few weeks. And I'm just worried for that. I know they're going to play Cork and Park Talton in 2 weeks' time, but it's going to be tough to see how they rebound after this. That's a really, really tough defeat to take. And what we said on my podcast during the week, Seamus, was that Louth wouldn't make the same mistakes as Kildare. And they did. Yeah. They definitely, I think they did to an extent. And that was the big thing with Louth, and we didn't expect it really with a Mickey Hart team at all, and she just made mistake after mistake. Like even in the first half for Mannion's goal, like I think there was nearly a 3-on-1.
Yeah,
and you're thinking, wow, Dublin. But you have to give credit to Dublin. Like, in fairness, like a lot of people thought Louth might put a challenge somewhat after Dublin's poor performance, and Louth, coming into the final with a bit of confidence. But for Dublin to score 5 goals, you still have to give them credit. 21 points as well. Bogler scoring 1-3 as well. My man of the match, outstanding performance. James McCarthy was brilliant in midfield. Mannion, brilliant. Colin Baskell, even brilliant as well. So, yeah, Dublin, you have to credit them. But for Louth, you'd wonder now, how are they going to pick themselves up in the next 2 weeks? Like, Cork is really a loser bust game. Win or bust, basically. Because the 2 other games for them 2 counties are Mayo and Kerry. And realistically, none, Louth or Cork are not when beating those sides. So, like, Louth and Cork in 2 weeks' time is going to be a huge game.
Oh, it's massive. And the tricky thing is for Louth is that, look, Cork will have been eyeing them up for a while now. Cork would have realistically known it was probably going to be Louth that were going to be playing them in that group. So you best believe they've been planning for this game for a long time. And that's why, honestly, in this moment, I would tip Cork to beat Louth. It's just, I feel like Louth will be demoralised. Cork have had a lot of time to recover after the Clare defeat. And yeah, honestly, I'd be tipping Cork to actually get the better of Louth in that game. But yeah, I couldn't believe how Louth were set up. Like I genuinely was like, what are they doing? Like pushing up on Dublin. The minute Dublin clocked, hang on, there's a load of space in here. Dublin hit a goal and 10 without reply in the second quarter of the game. Like, come on. And then in the second half, Louth managed to put together a few points. And look, they scored a few lovely points, but the game was done. Everybody knew the game was done. Conor Grimes hit one that was amazing. Liam Jackson hit a great point. But James McCarthy's goal in particular was like, I was watching it and almost, rooting for Louth because I wanted them to make a game of it. And when McCarthy's goal went in, it was one of those where, I bet you anyone watching who wasn't supporting Dublin would have watched that and been like, oh, for God's sake. Like, that was one of those goals where you're just like, how have they let that in? How did Keane Murphy end up completely unmarked in the penalty box? How did James McCarthy get the ball? And how did that shot, which had no power on it, go into the back of the net after it hit a Louth defender on the way? Then Dublin turned the screw. 3 goals coming towards the end of the game. 1 from Sean Bugler, 1 from nearly from Lee Gannon. He hit the bar. The rebound fell to Paddy Small. He put it in the net. And then Colin Pascal rounding off the misery. Just, again, like 13 Leinster titles in a row for Dublin. Their 62nd Leinster title in total. Will we ever see a reign of dominance over a province like this again?
Possibly Kerry and Munster. Maybe.
But Cork have talent coming through. You'd imagine they could beat them over the next 5 years.
Maybe. Like, it depends how you nurture that talent as well, because at the same time, I know we're going on cart now, but like even in the Clare game, from the 2019 under-20 side, only 1 from that side was in the Clare team that beat that Cork lost that game, and that was Colm O'Callaghan. So like, it doesn't seem the under-20s are coming through there. That's the worrying thing for Cork, and that's why I think Kerry could easily, put on the throttle there. But this is an incredible record for Dublin. But you'd have to expect, I think we'll talk about Kildare, Sligo in the minute in the under-20s.
Yeah.
But with Kildare's under-20 success, you have to expect Kildare will beat Dublin in the next few years. If they don't, it's nearly a disgrace, to be honest with you, Seamus. No disrespect to Dublin or anything like that, but Kildare 2 under-20s in 6 years and an under-20 final in 2022 as well against Tyrone.
Yeah.
Kildare should be challenging Dublin. And especially with the
consistently beating Dublin. Consistently beating Dublin. Yeah.
And with the players they have at the moment, you look at Jimmy Hyland, Dara Kierman, Kevin Feely, Daniel Flynn. Look, any of those players would get into any county team in the country. And you're thinking, how are they so far away from Dublin at the moment? I know they only lost by 2 points, but to be honest, Dublin weren't at the races that day. And Aaron is absolutely right in his analysis of that game in particular. If Kildare were in the right space of mind in that game, they would have beat Dublin.
Yeah.
That's his opinion on it as well. So, look, I think Kildare have to pluck up in the next few years, but until then, Dublin, I think, will go for 14th, maybe 15th in a row.
Yeah, and just before we move off that game, Dublin making a statement with their starting lineup. Obviously, Brian Howard back in, Paul Mannion back in, Jack McCaffrey started, Stephen Cluxon wore the number 1 jersey. Like, what did you make of the Dubs? All-Ireland contenders, or how do you see them?
Well, I think they have a pretty easy group in the All-Ireland, or whatever you call it, the qualifiers or the All-Ireland group stage. I'm not sure what to call it at this stage, but when you look at their group, Sligo, Kildare, Roscommon, and they're playing Roscommon and Croke Park, who don't necessarily do well in Croke Park historically. So I think Dublin will rack up a good few scores, good few points in that particular group. Then they go into an All-Ireland quarterfinal, get a lucky draw, and let's see where they go from there. I think it was a statement of intent actually yesterday. I don't know, have you seen the photo of Stephen Cluxon kissing the badge yesterday?
Yeah.
And that just shows you a bit of camaraderie there. And Cluxon's certainly back in the fold. I still feel sorry for David O'Hanlon, to be honest with you, but still, to have Cluxon there, it's brilliant accolade to have Howard there, to have Fenton, you have McCarthy back in midfield, you have Lee Gannon. If you can manage to bring in Dan O'Brien for Kilmacud Crokes as well, that's another addition as well. But I think Dublin at the moment, they look good. But the thing is, there's so many good teams at the moment. Kerry seem to be hitting their stride at the moment. Mayo have had a good rest. Galway look good. I think Tyrone are in good state as well. I think they actually didn't play that badly against Monaghan. You look at Derry, their starting 15s nearly better than anybody else in the country. So I think this could be the most exciting All-Ireland in terms of contenders for years, I think.
I completely agree with you. I think there's 6 teams actually, I think that could win it this year. My 6 is Mayo, Galway, Dublin, Kerry, Derry, Tyrone. And sorry to any team that's outside that, but I expect that the All-Ireland winners will come from that. And if you push me on an answer, I would say Kerry, but it'd be an interesting one, a fascinating one to watch it play out. We mentioned about Kildare. Obviously, they are under-20 football champions for 2023, beating Sligo by 117 to 12 points in Kingspan Breffni Park. So for Kildare, they stopped the Sligo fairy tale. To be fair, it was a Sligo side that was without Canis Mulligan and Dylan Walsh. But still, Kildare were hugely impressive. And the goal from Killian Brown was absolutely gorgeous. And they showed some serious talent. Again, second under-20 title in 6 years. Like, they're definitely going places.
They definitely are, yeah. And we mentioned on the podcast during the week, I think you went for Sligo because of the fairy tale itself. I went for Kildare because of the scores. And it proved that way. I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but 10 different scores for Kildare. 10. That's incredible, I have to say. And this looks a team to be together for a number of years now. Oisin O'Sullivan was brilliant. Owen Cully was actually the top scorer from playing the whole under-20 championship in the end. And he didn't start. That just shows you the amount of depth that Kildare have. And they've been absolutely incredible. You look at Shane Farrell, you look at Adam Fanning. Adam Fanning, he seemed to, be slow to find his groove, but when he did, he hit 3 gorgeous scores. I have to say, brilliant performance from him. Cormac Barker in goal, Tomas Van Engelberten at full-back was excellent. Like James Harris from wing-back was very good. Killian Brown coming off the bench. And he's another guy that you think, why isn't he starting? It's basically because Kildare have talent all over the panel. And that's a credit to them. And brilliant performance. But for Sligo, to be fair to Sligo, they fought back in the second half. They made a game of it. But it was just that period in the game. I think it was the 55th minute. Kildare scored 1-1 from 4 Sligo kickouts. Unfortunate for the Sligo goalkeeper, but that's where the cookie crumbles. And Kildare ran away with victory at the end. And wasn't it great? We had the mic drop, we had the paper drop and things like that, but we also had the mic steal from Shane Farrell and Marty Morrissey from the Sunday game as well. So that was a brilliant bit of entertainment too.
Yeah, fantastic. And they've definitely, like, the under-20 championship has been hugely exciting this year. And it's let us know that there's, 2 revolutions coming there in Kildare and Sligo, 2 teams to watch out for sure over the next years. And massive congratulations to Kildare, under-20 champions for 2023. We are going to move on because we've got so much to get through. Now we're starting on the blitz, really, if you like, of the Tailteann Cup, starting with group number 1, which of course Cavan 220, Laois a goal and 14 at Kingspan Breffni Park. And then on top of that, Offaly had a very comprehensive victory over London, 214 to 11 points in O'Connor Park. And really, first of all, speaking on the Cavan game, look, a dodgy first 20 minutes for Cavan. But then obviously they turned it around, completely put Laois to the sword. Whereas the Offaly London game was over before it even began. By the time that London got their first point on the board, 30 minutes had passed. Offaly already had a goal and 8. Keane Farrell had a field day, 2-4 from him. Good starts though for the 2 teams that I think are by far the best in that group.
Yeah, definitely so. And the Cavan Laois game was the only game I watched in full. It was on GAA Go, I said I may as well. And to be fair, I thought Laois would fold over after the Dublin game, but they performed excellent in the first half. I have to say, like Mark Barry, excellent footballer. Evan O'Carroll, brilliant goal, well taken goal. Cavan, brilliant performers. And like Cavan just had more energy. And that was the difference in the end in the second half. And that's what brought him through over the line. And it was an entertaining game, I thought, but it was a disappointing maybe end of the game because Laois just folded a small bit. But at the same time, I think Laois will take some confidence from this game. They can go into the Offaly game thinking we can pull off a scalp here. But even if they finish third, and they definitely put up a score in London, looking at the performance against Cavan. So I think Laois will go into the next 2 games with a bit of confidence, more so than when they got hammered by Dublin. As for the Offaly game, few things. Cian Farrell, brilliant performance with a 2-4, I think it was. And the most entertaining part of the game, I think, was I think it was some TikToker interviewing fans who would win the game. That was basically it. And yeah, brilliant win for Offaly, but London, unfortunately, Seamus look a bit out of their depth even in the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We're going to move on to the next group then, which of course saw Down and Meath pick up victories. Down 2-14, Waterford 1-6 at Park Esler, Meath 1-19, Tipperary 11 points from Park Tailteann. So Meath pick up their first victory since February, and as obviously you pointed out, it's only the second time all year that they have scored more scores than their opponents. So a very much needed victory for Colin O'Rourke's side. Of course, a debutant, Aaron Lynch, he stole the show with a goal and 3. And Meath pick up what is a very, very needed victory in the championship for them. While Down, routine victory, 2 goals in either half. Of course, Oran Murdoch back in the side. He actually struck one of the goals for Down. But a bit of a routine victory there, even though Waterford did start brightly. Down and Meath, in my opinion, declare top 2 in the group. Now, they won't face each other in the next game. Down obviously play Tipperary and Meath play Waterford, but I can't wait to see those 2 lock horns.
Yeah, it should be very, very fascinating indeed. And when you look at Down, actually, you have to give credit to Waterford. I didn't think they'd put up a fight, but in fairness to them in the first half, they got that goal. I think it was Conor Murray that got the goal, or somebody from Waterford anyway. And it was an excellent finish, I have to say. And you'd think Waterford are giving Down a game here, but then Down turned on the style and it was a routine victory in the end. As for Meath, yeah, Lynch, I seen some bits of him in the league, and I thought, why isn't this guy starting really? And he's an excellent forward, and Meath started him, Colin O'Rourke started him. He got 1-3, fair play to him, but then again, this is a poor Tipperary team, Division 4. So, and as you mentioned there, it's only the second time they've scored more scores than their opponents, as I mentioned as well in the podcast during the week. And unfortunately for Meath fans, I don't want to burst your bubble or anything, but 2 of those were Division 4 teams. So maybe do it at a team again against Down, maybe in Division 3. That could be the next level, and then see where you go with that. And before we cross over to you, Seamus, I think it was disappointing to see so many empty seats at Tailteann Cup games. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you think about that yourself. It looks like soulless, even in Park Esler for the game against from Down in Waterford, or even Cavan and Laois, despite the fact there was an under-20 final beforehand. I thought it was pretty lifeless. And that might not bode well for the Tailteann Cup going down the road.
Yeah, no, I feel like, look, the timing, the fact that it was on at the same time as the same day, a lot of the games are on at the same day as the ULSTER final. I feel like people might have been putting their attention on that game. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, look, market it, do it better, and see if you can try and, draw more attention to the games. But like, look, it's the second year. I'm sure they will sort it out. We're going to move on to the next group then. The 2 games that really, to be honest, like shocked me, they're coming up. The first game that we're going to look at, though, Limerick 2-16, Longford 1-16 at the Gaelic grounds in Limerick. And then, of course, the other game then was Carlow 17 points, Wicklow a goal and 13. And look, honestly, the Carlow one, we'll start with that. Wow, Carlow hitting the last 6 points of the game to get a victory against Wicklow. And to be honest, when the Owen Darcy goal went in, I thought that's it, wrapped up, finished. And then they managed to pull it back. The winner coming from Jonah Dunn, straight over the bar. Fantastic, winning point for Carlow. And that's the second year in a row now that Carlow have pulled off a victory, a very surprising victory over the side that got promoted out of Division 4. They did it to Tipperary last year, and then they did it to Wicklow now this year. Whereas with the Limerick game, obviously Limerick pulling off their first victory of 2023. They had a tough league campaign, bounce back, get the victory over Longford, even though Longford got that goal in added time. Obviously the goals that came from Downs, Cathal Downs and Brian Donovan, that were the key for them in that game, and both sides off to a winning start.
Yeah, definitely so. And Carlow, I apologise distinctly for the Carlow fans over the last few weeks. And I was saying your team are going to finish 7th in Division 4, and they finished 6th in the end. And I was thinking, okay, I'm right about Carlow, but that win, what a win, I have to say. And fair play to Carlow in the end for that. And they have some brilliant players. Like when you look at Carlow clubs over the last few years, I thought Carlow always had very good players coming through. the likes of Conor Crowley, Josh Egan at the moment from Palatine are excellent footballers. You have Dar Foley in the forward line and Jonah Dunn, as you mentioned, getting that fisted point at the end. And when Wicklow got the goal, you'd be forgiven for thinking this game is all but finished, really. But then Carlow finds something in them and they get the win at the end. Fair play to them and congratulations to all of Carlow there. And for Limerick, look, it was a win that's needed for Limerick. And Limerick, like, I honestly think Limerick have the players to go and challenge for the Tailteann Cup. If not, maybe get to a semi-final. You look at Cian Sheehan, without Josh Ryan, you have Ian Corpet there, you have Brian Donovan, you have Downs there, very good footballer. You still have Tommy Griffin. Like, Limerick still have very good players around the panel now. I think Limerick will be a threat. And as for Longford, they showed fight. Like, Longford have had a tough year since the Upper Cup, but they showed fight towards the end. Even they nearly scraped out of the bag, and fair play to them for that. And fair play to Paddy Christie as well. He missed communion involving a family member, and he went out of this game. So, brilliant story there.
Yeah, I'd say it's an awkward one though if he gets back and they say, "Did you win?" Nope. But no, fair play, and good victories there, obviously for Limerick and for Carlow. Moving then to the final group, I actually found this result more surprising, to be honest. Wexford drawing with Fermanagh at Brewster Park, 1-13 apiece. And then the other game from Corrigan Park in Belfast, Antrim 3-18, Leitrim 2-12. And I think both of these results, it's safe to say, are surprising results. The Fermanagh-Wexford game, it's a tale of two penalties. The first one given to Fermanagh, tucked away by Luke Flanagan. That had them in the driving seat. They were 1-7 to 4 points up at half-time. Then, of course, the black card for Sean McNally and the penalty converted by Ben Brosnan changed the game. And Dara Brooks with a late 45 to cancel out Sean Quigley's winner, or what it looked like it was going to be. While then the Antrim game, 2 goals for Adam Loughran, the other goal for Rory McCann, avenging last year's defeat in the Tailteann Cup. And for Leitrim, the year just gets tougher and tougher. They couldn't turn it around after the New York defeat, failed to get out of Division 4, looking pretty tough for them.
It is, and I suppose a lot of people will have questions about Andy Moore now. Like the New York game, we were thinking, okay, New York, this was always going to happen. Like the storm was about to come, and they came against Leitrim. And I was thinking actually, but the players that Leitrim had, I think this was about time they bounced back. We keep Byrne there, Evan Sweeney, Tom Pryor. There's some excellent players around the pitch for Leitrim. Shane Quinn at centre back as well as a very good footballer. But Antrim, they pulled it out of the bag, and fair play to Andy McEntee for that. I think Leitrim were ahead in the first half for most of the first half indeed, and then Antrim pulled it back towards the end. So brilliant victory for Antrim there. And the other game was it was a strange encounter between Wexford and Fermanagh. And we mentioned this in the podcast during the week. Fermanagh are a good side. Wexford are kind of strange in a sense that they kind of flop when they're expected to win. And then when they're not expected to win, they pull some result out of the bag. You have to say fair play to Wexford for that. And what I will say about John Haggerty and Wexford, they're building momentum a small bit now. Like Wexford have been in the doldrums for years now, since about 2011 when they pulled Dublin all the way in that 2011 Leinster final. They haven't found consistency since. But I think with John Haggerty at the helm, I think Wexford football is in the right hands. And I think Wexford could excel in the next number of years. Fermanagh, look, they got unlucky with a few calls in this game. Like Sean McNally, was it a penalty? I'm not sure. It looks very 50-50. Very 50-50 looking in the Sunday game. But look, it was a draw, and I think both sides will still be a threat going down home straight. Like, it should be tight between Fermanagh, Wexford and Antrim going down the home straight. But for Leitrim, I think Andy Moore could be seen out the door, to be honest with you, Seamus.
Yeah, it's definitely looking dangerous. And speaking of people that could be shown the door after this weekend's action, you know where I'm segueing to here? The hurling action from the weekend. Waterford, 16 points. Clare, 222 from Semple Stadium in Thurles. Waterford are out of the championship already after just 3 games, 3 back-to-back defeats. They've scored no goals in their 3 games. They haven't hit over 20 points in any of their 3 games. They've just been pretty bad, to be honest. And like, you got Davey there, pretty defiant after saying he's not going anywhere. He showed more defiance than his players did in any 3 of their games, because like when their backs were against the wall and they needed to pull out a performance in the second half to save themselves, they only hit 6 points in that second half. For a forward line with Desi Hutchinson, Austin Gleeson, Stephen Bennett, Patrick Fitzgerald, Patrick Curran, Michael Kiley, who scored 4 goals in the Fitzgibbon Cup final. For that forward line to not break 20 points, to not score a goal in 3 games, it's not good enough.
Simply isn't. And I think there's some friction behind the scenes, to be honest with you. Davy looks out of his depth really on the sideline. I think Buffy could put up a post, and he's actually correct. A member of the backroom team, Donnacha O'Callaghan, was up analysing rugby on the day of Waterford Clare. And you're thinking, why isn't he down with his team?
Mm-hmm.
There's something seriously wrong with Waterford. And you're absolutely right. The forwards they have, Patrick Fitzgerald was probably club player of the year, arguably. Mikey Kiley, although he was injured, to be fair, but still in the first 2 games, to use him, and he has scored a bucket loads of goals at the Fitzgibbon Cup, top scorer for play, indeed. Austin Gleeson, Stephen Bennett, Patrick Curran, Neil Montgomery. These were the same group of players that reached the All-Ireland final in 2020. And you're thinking, what has gone wrong with these players, to be honest with you? And it's kind of like, it reminds me a lot of Tottenham in the Premier League, to be honest with you, Seamus. Because it's like, they have so many managers coming in. You look at Derek McGrath, Pádraig Manning, Liam Cahill, now Davy Fitz. You're thinking, there seems to be a common denominator here. It's not just the manager here. Yes, Davy has some questionable tactics, like, for instance, in the league, putting Daisy Hutchins in the middle of the field, which was bonkers, to be honest with you. But you have to blame the players as well. And the way they down tools, I think, once Caleb Lyons got sent off, look, Kim McGrath described it, I think, on Twitter as embarrassing. And I mean, with the players that Waterford have, I definitely echo that. And honestly, I think Clare are an outstanding team. But Clare did not show well in the first half. Waterford could have killed them off. They hit 12 wides in the first half. And you're thinking, wow, this team is well off the radar here. Something seriously wrong. And another thing before I go to you, Seamus, another stat with that will boil Waterford fans' brains. Across minor, under 20 and senior, 11 games, 11 defeats in Munster.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And it probably just shows you where Waterford hurling is going, unfortunately, for the Daisha.
Yeah, I mean, like, but that's the point that you're making. Like, the players are there. Like, this is the same group of lads that were considered All-Ireland contenders last year after winning the league. Like, this is the same group of lads. They're not bad players. It's just like, for some reason, they're not clicking. And it's mad that you compared them to Tottenham, because on Aaron's podcast earlier today, I said Davy Fitz is like Jose Mourinho, as in he comes in, gets a bounce out of the players, wins a trophy or two, and then leaves. And I said, this is the season where it doesn't work. This is the club where it doesn't work. Like Jose Mourinho when he went to Tottenham Hotspur. So it's mad that you made that comparison, because I was on the exact same wavelength when I was on Aaron's podcast today. But yeah, like, for Waterford, it's just unthinkable that they've already fallen out in such a limp way. And the thing that I'd be saying here is, just don't make it worse than the last game. Like, they're going to be playing Tipperary. Like, Tipperary. Liam Cahill's Tipperary. Like, do you know what I mean? And then, as if, like, they didn't need more, frustration, Davy Fitz and Brian Lohan, still no love lost between those. I'm wondering, did you see his comments at the end of the game about all that situation?
I seen that Davy Fitz used the word clown.
Yeah.
So
there's clearly no love lost, and he did describe it as being personal. So, and like, everybody knows it's personal, but I think it's reached a new level after that.
And the thing is, Brian Lohan now, you talk about Brian Lohan and Davy Fitz, the rivalry of all rivalries in management. But Brian Lohan has now knocked Davy Fitz out of the All-Ireland series 4 times, I think it was. I think I've seen that stat, which is ridiculous. You know, and it probably just shows. And with Davy Fitz as well, I think since 2019, I think I've seen this stat earlier today as well. Since 2019, the only teams that Davy Fitz has actually beaten in the All-Ireland series are Offaly. I think there's a few other teams, Westmeath, Antrim, and Kilkenny in the Leinster final in 2019. That's it, in championship level.
Since 2019?
Since 2019, wow. That's what I was hearing anyway. I was thinking, you have to beat Dublin, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, there was nearly all draws with Dublin, even with the Wexford team there.
Yeah.
Now with Waterford. Yeah, I think Waterford, I think the players are downing tools with Waterford, and I think the blame should go with them. But Davy seems to be losing his touch now. And I regret to say this because Davy is one of the best managers I've ever seen in hurling history. The commitment he gives to the game, the commitment he gives to Ireland for his family as well, is immense. But I just think this is the year where you're thinking it's all going belly up. Things are going wrong. And he's blaming the media, he's blaming other managers. And yeah, that's a sign of denial, to be honest with you, James.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, we've compared him to Mourinho twice now. How many times did Mourinho do that? Start blaming other people when it all falls apart. So you wonder how they cut from the same cloth. But look for Clare, impressive enough, but again, they weren't too pushed. Tony Kelly with 13 points, Cathal Malone with one of the goals. Ian Galvin got the first one before Caleb Lyons got sent off. And on to the next stage for Clare, the big game against Cork. Cannot wait for that one. But we're going to move on now to the Joe McDonagh Cup, which of course had two big results in it. Obviously, Offaly naming a completely different side going up to play against Carlow. Me and you speculated, were they going to do that? They ended up losing to Carlow by a goal and 29 to 14 points, while down at the other end, Down surprised, I think it's fair to say, both of us, by beating Kildare by 127 to 313 to stay up and to relegate Kildare to the Christy Ring Cup. Big shout out to Pierce Og McCrickard. He hit 15 points for Down to help keep them up. So very exciting action in the John McDonagh Cup, and the final of the John McDonagh will be Carlow versus Offaly.
It will be, and we discussed it in depth in the podcast during the week, saying, will Offaly do it, won't they? Will they, won't they? They did it, and Carlow won it in the end. I seen Willie Maher on Twitter, I think it was Will O'Callaghan posted this from Off the Ball, saying that Willie Maher was saying if he was in Offaly's position, he would have played his first team. I'm thinking, are you sure? Are you sure? It's bizarre that he goes out and says that, to be honest with you. To be honest, and I've seen Colin Parkinson tweet actually earlier today, and it's a very good point. Like, Offaly were always going to play a second team because they had the Joe McDonagh Cup final in mind. They won 4 games out of 4. You're thinking they have the right to do that, in fairness to them. But having a playoff between second and third place, if the GAA had, and we talk about the calendar again, I think that would have probably been a better solution, because it was just the look at the draw with the fixtures in many ways. Because Carlow got the short straw, or the long straw. They got Offaly in the last game, who fielded a second team, while Laois were facing a Kerry team that were also battling promotion. In fairness, Laois did the job in the end, but they were always going to lose out to a Carlow team that were facing basically a B team. But the Joe McDonagh Cup final should be very interesting in the next few weeks now. We'll see what Offaly are made of. It's huge pressure now on Offaly when you think about it, Seamus. After fielding a second team, they have to go out and win that game against Carlow in the next few weeks now to prove they are the big dogs now. If they don't, I think there could be a few eggs in their faces after this, but there's a bit of egg in Willie Maher's face at the moment from Laois. But at the same time, for Down and Kildare, like, what a league campaign they had. I think they nearly had a 100% record in the league, near close to that. They lose the league final to Offaly, and then they lose all the Joe McDonagh Cup games. And I go back to the comments of Jackie Tyrrell on the Sunday game, saying that hurling needs to be developed in many counties, and Kildare being one of those counties. How demoralising will this be for Kildare? Performing so well in the league, then for all that effort just to go back down to the Christy Ring Cup again. I mean, they'd be absolutely devastated, Kildare. But fair play to them. Fair play to Ronan Sheehan, the manager, who's fairly active on Twitter as well. So, very good achievement for Down. Very good for Pierce Og McCrickard. But for Kildare, they'd be absolutely demoralised.
Yeah, it's one of those. It reminds me a lot of the Carlow Rising, where Carlow got promoted to Division 3 and then pretty much lost all the games and went right back down to Division 4. It was like, what was all that for? Because they've ended up in the exact same place a few years later. But for Kildare, look, rebuild, keep going, because there is talent there, and I'm sure they can bounce back. But we're going to move off hurling now. We're going to go to the LGFA, where we had some fantastic action from the Provincial Championships, and you are not reading this scoreline wrong. Armagh 8-14, Cavan 2-7. 8-14. Amy Mackin scored more than Cavan did. Amy Mackin scored 3 goals and 7 points. Like, just absolutely ridiculous. Kelly Mallon, the captain, also hit 2-4. And me and you have said this time and time again. When this Armagh side win, they win well.
Yeah, and they did the same in the Laois game in the league final as well. And this Armagh team is absolutely superb. You look at Amy Mackin, you look at Kelly Mallon, you look at Aoife McCoy, who I'm sure got a goal as well, Seamus, in this game.
Yeah.
Like, they have some forward line. And when you look at their defence as well, Clodagh McCambridge, Anna Carr in goal, Bláthí Mackett, of course, who's almost like Bláthí's almost like Polly Clifford, and Amy Mackin's almost like David Clifford. Like, the similarities are incredible in a way. But they complement each other, and what a win for Armagh. What a win. And they're going to win Ulster, aren't they? They're going to play Donegal in the final. The Donegal team,
that's it. Armagh v Donegal. And we both know they're going to win this game. There's not a doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I'd say Armagh are going to win this game pretty handily. Like, Donegal have seemed to have fallen off the wagon from last season, and that's a real problem for Donegal. And Niamh McLaughlin, I'm not sure. I think she's still playing the Player of the Year last year. Yeah. If she'd have to have a huge game for Donegal to win it, but I think Armagh should win this pretty easily, and I think Armagh will be dark horses for the All-Ireland this season.
Completely agree. I think that once their attack is clicking, there's no attack in the country like the Armagh attack. It's just whether or not they can hold out other teams down at the other end. Like, you've got the Kerry attack, you got the Meath attack, the Dublin attack. They're all very dangerous. And if they come up against an Armagh defence that is not at 100%, they could do serious damage. Speaking of the Kerry attack, they are into the Munster final down south, where they will face off against Cork. That was after these two semi-finals. Cork 2-10. Waterford 4 points in Clonakilty, and Tipperary 1-5. Kerry 2-8 from Bancha. So, of course, Cork and Kerry drew with each other 2-14 each in their game in the Munster group stage. They will now face off against each other in the final after they're both victorious in the semi-final. Which team are you leaning more towards? For me, it's more impressive the way Cork beat Waterford. Waterford had shown serious progression. To hold that Waterford side to only 4 points was very impressive.
Very, very impressive. And this team, this Cork ladies football team, is going up in my estimations bit by bit. I think this is a very, very good side. Like, Eric O'Shea midfield are playing around there. Excellent footballer. And she's definitely added to the team this season. I think Laura Fitzgerald from Mourne had an excellent game. And this was her first appearance for Cork, I believe. What a performance for her. Orla Callahan in the forward line, excellent. There seems to be a young crop of players now coming from Cork, and it's really, really promising, I have to say. And these players are giving their all, and brilliant performance from them. And before we get on to Kerry, it was great to see Clonakilty on the screen there, Seamus, because I'm actually nearly from there. So, pretty good. See Clonakilty. It was great for the club, basically, to have a ladies football game there. Cork and Waterford, two pretty good sides as well. So, pretty good for the club in general down there in West Cork. But as for Kerry, they got the job done really against Tipperary. But Tipperary weren't too far away. This was a close game for the ladies football over the weekend. So, pretty good showing for Tipperary there. But Kerry, pretty good as well. Siobhan O'Shea, Louise Neave-Hurtig, we know the rest. Like, they have excellent forwards, Niamh Carty there as well. In terms of the final, it's on in Mallow. I would have to back. I'm going to be biased here, Shane. I'm going to go for Cork to win it. I'm going to be biased, but I just think Cork are hitting form at the right time, and Kerry are hitting a stumbling block where they just can't beat Cork. I know Kerry are doing well at the moment, and they probably will do in the All-Ireland up Mayo. Exactly, Denise. But I'd probably go for Cork to win the Munster Championship over Kerry, despite Kerry win the league and reaching All-Ireland final last year.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting. I have said that I've picked Kerry to actually win that game, but also here Longford were outstanding against Carlow. Yeah, not 100% sure what game you're talking about, but on top of that, so we're gonna move on then to the Leinster games, which of course Meath played against Laois in O'Moore Park, and it was clear that Laois had been hurt after their defeat to Dublin. Now, that was a really, really rough day at the office for them, because in the first half against Meath, they really, really stuck it to them, and at halftime they were only trailing by 2 points. But then in the second half, Meath just took over. Emma Duggan went on to hit 6 points. Meath won the game by 10. And holding a forward line with Mo Nerney and their own Fitzpatrick to 5 points. Hugely impressive.
Very impressive. And it seems to be Meath are kicking into form at just the right time before they face Dublin. And what's actually...
The Longford Carlow game was on the LGFA side. That's my bad. I thought you were mixing up. I thought you was mixing up Wicklow against Carlow. That's why I got confused. But great victory obviously there. So back to the Meath game. Hugely impressive, holding out the likes of Monerny and around Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, pretty good victory for Meath, and they seem to be going into form at just the right time. And I've seen that final against Dublin's on at Portlaoise, so I think that will actually suit Meath more. So, it should be a tight pitch. I think Meath will actually do well against Dublin there. So, I still think Dublin would win the game, but I think Meath will put up a very, very good fight in fairness to them. But for Laois, All-Ireland series now, and as far as I know, I'm looking at the All-Ireland groups at the moment. Laois will be in with most likely Mayo and Donegal. So still there's hope to beat Donegal.
You've got a Donegal side there that have played terribly so far this year. Mayo do look good. Like Mayo have had some good performances this year and they look very, very strong. And obviously Connacht champions there, they look seriously strong. But I think Donegal are beatable.
They definitely are. And I think Aaron actually in his predictions video predicted Laois to beat Donegal. And I would actually nearly agree with him, to be honest with you. If even McLaughlin and Granny McLaughlin don't hit their form, don't hit their usual heights, Laois have a chance. Yeah. I'm telling you. So I just think they need to keep the players together. They need to keep the morale up, and I think they could do serious things. But as for Meath and Dublin, the winners go into a group with the Munster runners up and Cavan. So you'd have to expect they'll reach the top two. Like Cavan are just not good enough at this stage. But the Leinster runners up actually face Waterford and Armagh. So that's going to be a very, very tough group. So I think this game is actually very crucial between Meath and Dublin.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Like, there's more than a Leinster title at stake here. And look, the rivalry between Dublin and Meath over the last few years has been electric. And I can't wait to see the latest installment of it. Dublin obviously won the game in the group stage in the Leinster Championship, but Meath definitely will have their eyes set firmly on revenge. Just before we move on to Camogie, we're just going to touch on the Connacht Intermediate Final. Roscommon 2-13, Leitrim a goal and 7. Aisling Hanley with the brace of goals for Roscommon as they claim the Connacht Intermediate title off the holders, Leitrim, and huge progress being made there in the Rossies.
There's a very nice forwards actually. Aisling Feely's a very good player as well. Aisling Hanley, brilliant forwards there, and Roscommon seem to be doing good things. I think Lisa O'Rourke, she was actually an Olympic boxer and she's playing in this team as well, so pretty good showing from Roscommon. But Leitrim's still a good players, like Michelle Gokin was only the second LGA player to score 45 as well, so she's still a very, very good player. So it's a very good win for Roscommon, and I think they'll do well in the Intermediate Championship this season. I think they reached the semi-finals last year before they got beaten by Laois, I think it was, and Wexford beat Clare. Clare, another team that are very good in the Intermediate Championship. So with Laois gone there, I think the Intermediate Championship should be very, very competitive this season.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And then we move on to the Camogie, and this is our last code to run through. So and I'm just going to run through. We have 3 games, which 2 were provincial finals, and 1 for me basically was one anyway. Starting with the Munster one, Tipperary 126, Clare 19. Tipperary are Munster Camogie champions for 2023. Going up north, then Down 15 points, Antrim 9 points. Down are champions up in Ulster. And Kilkenny 114, Dublin 13 points in the Leinster Championship. Look, for Dublin, watching that game, look, we've been pretty handedly beaten by Kilkenny the last few times we played them. So to get that close to them is definitely a sign of progress. But definitely the main game out of them was Tipperary-Clare. Tipperary, absolutely outstanding. You've got like Emer McGrath hitting 6 points, Emer Heffernan hitting 1-3. Just fantastic display, and holding a Clare forward line, which is very talented, has the likes of Lorna McNamara, holding them to 1-9 and beating them by 17 points. Great day at the office.
And they hammered Waterford last week as well, who beat Cork, who were nearly the kingpins of Munster Camogie as well. So Tipperary, and I said this on Instagram a post as well, how serious can you think of Tipperary as all our contenders this season? Because you look at Galway,
they're most likely to break into the triangle of Galway, Cork, Kilkenny. I think they're the most likely.
They are. They some very, very good players like Emer Bugrani, Emer Heffernan, as you mentioned. Caught Devan wasn't even one of their main players against Clare. She still hit 4 points for play.
Mhm.
That's an incredible tally. Like you've Roisin Howard there, who's very consistent, Cueva Marr, Grace O'Brien. So Tipperary have scores all over the field. And I've seen Tipperary could do well this season. You look at Cork, they're in a bit of a sticky patch. Kilkenny didn't beat Dublin by much. And no disrespect, Seamus, I don't think Dublin or National are that great in Camogie.
Yeah.
So I still think Kilkenny have a bit to go. Galway are very inconsistent as well, and they've lost a few players. And Niamh Kilkenny's retired, so is Heather Cooney. Like Galway still have a lot of players going. I know Sarah Dervin's coming back into the league, but when you look at all them factors, Tipperary have a huge chance to make history, in my opinion, and break into that. Is it?
Yeah, the time could be now for Tipperary to go for it. And then obviously down there, ULSTER champions for 2023 as well.
Yeah, very good victory for down there. And the Antrim seem to be having good players coming through as well. So these two sides are actually in the senior championship in Camogie as well. So it's actually great to see Ulster Camogie coming up through the ranks in general. I think Derry reached the intermediate semi-final. They were narrowly beaten by Cork's second team last year. So like it's great to see Ulster Camogie actually rising through the ranks, and maybe it will pave the way for the men's hurling sides in Ulster to do the same.
Yeah, no doubt. And you wonder, you might see a few double headers coming down the line there. Obviously down on the men's side, surviving once again in the John McDonough Cup for another year. Here's a comment that we have here. You may have mentioned earlier, but only joined recently. Predictions for Mayo versus Kerry and Galway versus Tyrone. Okay, so those are 2 games that are going to be on next weekend. Now, there will be a full preview episode coming here on Play on GAA on the Wednesday evening. So I do encourage you to tune into that. But really quickly, Matthew, we will give that comment what it wants. Of course, we will answer Denise's question. Mayo versus Kerry, Galway versus Tyrone. From the outset, what are we thinking here?
I'm probably going to go, very, very controversial picks here, both of them. I'm going to go Mayo and Tyrone.
They're completely different to me. Completely different to me. I'll go Kerry and Galway.
Jeez, I just think Tyrone weren't that bad against Monaghan. And I think Kerry haven't got a test yet, Seamus.
Yeah.
I'm basing on that. I think Mayo would have learned a lot from the Roscommon game. So I'm going to go Mayo to win that game. And I think Tyrone, I agree with Paul Finn and what he said in the Sunday game last night. I think Tyrone, rather than Derry and Armagh, are actually hitting form. And they have very good players, very good panel indeed. So I'm going to go for Mayo and Tyrone wins completely against
Look at that. You've done something right. But, yeah, I feel like, look, definitely you could argue Mayo's rest would have definitely given them time. For me, Kerry looked really, really impressive in the way that they dispatched Clare. Like, they looked really, really ruthless. And, when you look at Mayo getting beaten by Roscommon, but then again, Mayo Division 1 champions, and they did beat Kerry in the league very convincingly. It's a really, really hard one to call. But then again, I look last year and I just look at how comfortably Kerry beat Mayo in the quarterfinal last year. You can't really shake that out of your head. I think if Kerry turn up 100%, they beat every team in the country right now.
Thing is, the caveat to that, Seamus, is that wasn't the Mayo team last year. It's not the same as this season.
That was the end of James Horan's era. He was halfway out the door when that result happened.
Yeah, and when you look at Kevin McStay and how he's revolutionised this Mayo team, the midfield looks settled. You've Ryan O'Donoghue. Cillian O'Connor can't start in this team, and they were begging him to start last season. This is a different mentality for Mayo. I think Mayo will beat Kerry and Killarney. I think this will be a statement for the whole All-Ireland Championship, and none better than Kevin McStay to prove that.
Yeah, and Galway, Tyrone?
I still back Tyrone. I know Galway are performing well and they've done well, but I just feel Tyrone would have had more rest than Galway. I just think so. I think Tyrone will get through.
The Sligo game was basically a rest for Galway. No disrespect. Like, for long periods of the second half, Galway took their foot off the gas. The game was over.
True, yeah. But I just think Tyrone, like, and I think Aaron made the prediction in his videos earlier on. It's not necessarily the provincial champions that will top these groups. It doesn't mean that they'll do well in the All Ireland, further on down the line. It just means that the teams with more rest would top these groups and go straight through to the quarterfinals. That's my take on it anyway. I think in terms of an early prediction, but yeah, and Kerry haven't been tested in the championship. That's my point exactly, Denise. But in an early prediction now before we leave it, Seamus, I think top of the groups will be Mayo, Tyrone, Dublin, and Derry will be top of the groups and going straight through to the quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I can see why you're tipping both teams to win it. My first instinct is Kerry and Galway will win it. But so we'll we'll clip this up and one of us will send it to the other one depending on how the results go. I'm sure, like, look, if there's any sort of just one team, will either Mayo or Kerry will win, and either Galway or Tyrone will win, and we'll be both left with one apiece and both live to fight another day. But yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on today, Matthew, as well. Another very, very good episode, another good review of the weekend's action. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much, Seamus. Glad to be on.
Good stuff, right? And thank you, the viewers, for watching. Until the next one, guys, take care.